Want an easy way to see if you could save money on car insurance? Geico gives you 3. Call 1-800-947-AUTO. Go online to geico.com or stop by the Geico office nearest you. 3 ways you could save 15% or more.
Good morning. We are back in better than ever. Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line of Football Friday, the first in November. With baseball behind us now, save for the celebration. A parade today for the world champs in Houston. Booger McFarland is here again today, and I love watching parades on television. I personally can't imagine anything worse than going to one in person, unless you are, on the float or the duck boat or whatever it is that is being celebrated. But did you have parades when you won the 2 championships that you won?
Absolutely. One was tremendous and one was miserable.
I'm going to guess that the miserable one was Indianapolis because it's early February in Indianapolis and you're freezing your little southern took us off.
Greeny, I'll start with the most miserable one, which was the one in Indy. We won the Super Bowl in Miami where it rained all Super Bowl long. It was a great game, fitting because when Tony Dungy got fired in Tampa, they showed a clip on the news. He was carrying the box from his office to his car, and it was pouring down raining. So how ironic was it that we won the Super Bowl down in Miami? It rains. We wake up that Monday, fly back to Indy. Tuesday's parade, 0 degrees.
0
degrees. And they're passing out hoodies for us at the parade. So we get on this float, and we're driving, and everybody's like, yeah, man, this is great. You won the championship. Everybody's lined up. It's snow on the ground. And I'm miserable. I'm in the back of the float. I'm covered up. You can only see my eyes out of this thing. I got a hoodie on, and it's absolutely miserable, Greeny, to the point where that when we got back to the stadium, because the float came downtown, went back inside the stadium. So we're on stage in the stadium, and everybody's kind of warming up. I'm still full hoodie, clothes, locked in.
Booger does not like the cold. For those of you who are new to our show, I mean, people can tolerate the cold. I don't mind it nearly as much as you do. First of all, my definition of cold and yours are totally different.
What's your definition of cold?
I mean, I remember the day that you came up here and you filmed a little Instagram video before you came in the building, and it was like 36 degrees, and you were freezing and snot was running out of your
36
nose.
36 isn't cold?
No, 36 is not cold. 36 is brisk. It's definitely not cold. Let me put it this way. If it were 36 all through the winter, it would be a delight. I mean, there are days that we beg for 36.
Well, Greedy, I beg to differ. 36 is frigid.
Okay, so my point is then 0 in Indianapolis, now you're really struggling.
I was miserable, Greedy.
How about Tampa? How about the Tampa parade?
One was great because it came down Bayshore, which is like the longest uninterrupted sidewalk in the United States. And so the parade came right down that street that ran right next to it. And so it's 70 degrees. It's early February. People are out. We're walking in the parade. So we got off the floats and started walking. It was absolutely phenomenal.
I can't imagine that. So there are many people right now listening to or watching this conversation who live in Florida.
Yes.
They live in Arizona. They live in Southern California or other places like that. I can't imagine what life would be like not to have a winter. Like, it seems too good to those of us who were born and raised in this. I lived all my life either in the New York area or in Chicago. So, I mean, I know from scraping ice off the windshield with a credit card. That's what I know. That's life as I know it in the winter. And it's something that I hate. And as I've gotten older, I hate it more and more. But it's just a part of life. It's something I can't fathom not having to put up with. Yeah. It seems too good. Like, life shouldn't be allowed to be so good that it's 70 degrees in February.
Well, it's not a part of my life to the point where winter in Florida is like this. When the temperature turns anything below 60, people go down to Saks or Neiman's and get their fur coats out of the little pine box that they keep them in. People start wearing leather. They have boots on. Sweaters come out, anything below 60 degrees. 60 degrees up here, everybody's like, it's bombing. They got shorts on. People are running outside with no shirts on.
60 degrees, is, in my opinion, is the dividing line between shorts and no shorts on the golf course. You can wear shorts if it's 61. You're wearing longs if it's 59. Now, I happen to like wearing longs all the time. I'll wear longs. My dividing line that is 80. If it's 76, I'll wear longs just because I like it. I feel good wearing long pants. And then it's too warm for that. So my point is, yes, I can't fathom that. That said, folks in Houston, enjoy this. You obviously had some bad sports news yesterday, but you have the biggest sports news of all with the Astros and their celebration parade today. Now let's dive into that bad news because it begins right there in Houston where unimaginably Deshaun Watson tore his ACL in practice yesterday and is out for the season. When that news, I was sitting having dinner with my family last night, and when that news came over, I had to read it like 4 times to make sure There just didn't seem there was any way in the world I was reading that right. Deshaun Watson, who was one of the most genuinely exciting, thrilling things that has happened to the National Football League this year or in recent memory, and running off the field in practice, from what I'm reading, grabbed his leg, didn't even seem to be a big deal at the time at all, didn't yell with pain or anything. And then they do an MRI, and he's got an ACL, and he's done for the year.
Well, Greeny, he was running a read option play, which is a normal play that Bill O'Brien has put in their system. And so he ran, I think it was to the right, and it was a normal play that they ran numerous times in practice, and he kind of pulled up. No screaming, no yelling, no cursing, no slamming the helmet. Fell down, called the trainer. They came, checked it out. Next thing you know, his practice is over. Practice goes on. Guys started finding out later on via the wire, news, and Twitter, whatever, that Deshaun Watson had torn his ACL. This is the opposite ACL that he tore at Clemson. So now you have a quarterback whose mobility is a big part of his game, who now he's torn both ACLs, one in 2014 in college and now one in 2017 in the National Football League.
This is heartbreaking. I don't want to overstate it. Like, he's a young man, and he'll rehab, and he'll come back, and he'll be fine. But in a football season that needs as many good stories as it can possibly find, I don't know that there's a better one right now than what this kid has done in Houston. And for it to end like this in practice, it's impossible to believe.
For a league that had gone through so much with the off the field concerns, with the kneeling, with the anthem, with the president, this was a feel-good story. This was a guy that was coming in, and he was getting praise from everyone, Greeny. Everyone liked Deshaun Watson. And you can see what happened yesterday on Instagram and Twitter and social media, the outpouring of support for him. He was well-liked, and it's not too often that you get a guy that's liked by almost everyone in the National Football League. So that's why this one hurts so hard.
Yeah, again, he'll come back, I'm sure. And the way the medical technology is now, he'll come back, and he'll be strong, and he'll be fine. And I'm sure he'll have a great career. But this was just startling news yesterday. Not quite as surprising was the news that Andrew Luck's season is over. He's got the shoulder. He's going to go on the injured reserve. He will not play at all this year. And you'll hear Steve Young a little bit later in this program, as he was saying yesterday. There's legitimate concern right now about Andrew Luck's future. A shoulder for a quarterback is just not a good situation.
You know, Greeny, sometimes injuries are bad luck. Sometimes injuries are bad timing. But in my opinion, sometimes injuries can be self-induced, not by Andrew Luck, but by the coach. Greeny, they've surrounded this young man by a miserable offensive line, by pretty much a terrible supporting cast. And you can go back to Ryan Grigson. I know he's no longer the GM, but it starts with Ryan Grigson, with the amount of money that they haven't put around the offensive line. The number one thing in football you do, when you get a franchise quarterback, when you get Aaron Rodgers, when you get Tom Brady, you surround them with players. They've not done that with Andrew Luck. And so in my opinion, yeah, it can be bad luck, but a lot of it can be self-induced by the organization for the lack of support they put around this young man, Greeny.
It's a devastating blow there for them, and their season is going the direction it's going. They'll wind up with a very high draft pick.
Right. Off the top.
We'll see what happens there. Okay, Lonzo Ball held scoreless in 28 minutes of action last night. It's the most minutes by a rookie top 5 pick without scoring since 1992. It's the first time in his NBA or one-season college career that Lonzo Ball has ever been held scoreless in a game. How big a deal should be made of this?
I don't think it should be a big deal. He's never been a prolific scorer. He's a guy that's a floor general. He's an assist guy. He's going to defend. He's long, athletic. Like, people are making a big deal out of his scoring like he's Russell Westbrook. He's never going to be a scoring point guard. I don't think it's a big deal. Do you?
Well, no. To be held scoreless in one game is not a big deal.
Right.
No. But what has happened, one of the for better or worse, one of the byproducts of his father's constant talking is that every game the kid plays becomes a referendum on everything.
Right.
It becomes a referendum on the brand, and it becomes a referendum. You know, that one game against when they where he's not going to lose twice in a week and all that kind of stuff. And Washington was coming in, and they won that game in overtime. I felt like we should lead the show with it. It was such a big deal. It was a regular season game between the Lakers and the Wizards, and it felt like it had like championship implications. So everything is a little bit magnified, perhaps beyond the perspective that it deserves when it comes to Lonzo
Some of
Ball.
that's our doing, though, Greeny. Some of that is because we have bought into the brand. We have bought into LeVar, and now we watch Lonzo with a closer eye. And I think that if we're going to give this kid his fair share, we have to allow him to be a rookie. He's an assist-first point guard. He's never going to be a guy that's going to average 25, 10, and 11. He's not going to do that. So allow him to grow into who he's going to be, which I think he's going to be a very good player.
Off the top.
The Warriors came from 19 down to beat the Spurs last night in the first meeting of the season between these two teams. It remains the most interesting matchup, I think, in the NBA's Western Conference. And we'll see what Oklahoma City turns out to be this year, and we'll see what Houston turns out to be this year, and all these other. But right now, the marquee remains on Golden State and San Antonio. And again, it's the Warriors 19 down, and they come back to win.
Well, I'm not really paying much attention to this. The Spurs are still without Kawhi Leonard. He's got that quad injury. But there is a neat little stat. Himbo, you were talking about the stat where the Spurs, this is the first time they've been, near 500, or Popovich have been close to 500?
He's getting it for you right now.
Okay, yeah. So it's amazing how good they've been. But I'm not paying a lot of attention to this right now because Kawhi Leonard is out.
Yeah, this isn't what the Spurs are ultimately going to be.
Off the top.
But as it goes in November, basketball is a pretty interesting little night. And that brings us to the Jets and the Bills on Thursday Night Football. Let's call that off the top.
I knew you were going to do that.
Presented by Progressive Insurance. You could save hundreds on your car, your business, or your recreational vehicle insurance from a local independent agent. Go to Progressive.com today. Now that's Progressive. The Buffalo Bills, who were the talk of the league coming into this week. Jeff Saturday on our show Monday said, at noon yesterday I was selling the Bills, and by 6 o'clock last night I was buying the Bills. Everyone in the world was jumping on the Buffalo bandwagon, and they showed up last night at MetLife Stadium to face the New York Jets, who, look, I'll give them credit. They're an undermatched team, or an overmatched team, I guess I should say, whose franchise, whose overall leadership viewed this as a rebuilding year and a strip it down to the studs kind of year. But a lot of those kids are playing. They've got a bunch of young guys who are playing hard. They have a couple of veterans, namely Matt Forte and Josh McCown, who both played great last night, who are playing hard and aren't letting this team sort of fold. And they win last night in a game that was decidedly one-sided. They win. That game is 34-7 at one point last night, and they get to 4-5. The Jets are having, I would say, by any standard of measure, an astonishingly good year.
No doubt they are. And if you're looking around the National Football League and you want to know what the consummate professional, what the consummate backup quarterback looks like, look no further than Josh McCown. He's never going to be a consistent starter year in and year out. But what he's doing right now is showing you how to be a professional. He played well last night. People always say he's sneaky athletic. No, he's just athletic. The guy's good. He keeps his body in great shape. But last night, to me, was less about McCown and the offense and more about the Jets defense. People started tweeting out about the New York sack exchange and how that defensive line played back in the day. And last night's defensive line reminded people of that. They blitzed a lot, 7 sacks. They were all around Tyrod Taylor. They made life miserable for them. But the number one thing they did, Greeny, they did not allow the Buffalo Bills to run the football. Only had 63 yards rushing. So they took the run game away. And Buffalo has kind of prided themselves so far this season on being a physical football team. They took the physicality to Buffalo, made Tyrod Taylor try to win the game. He threw 40 passes. That's not the recipe for Buffalo. And I think if you're Coach McDermott and you're Buffalo, you got to kind of go back and understand who you are. You're a running football team that's going to play defense. Your quarterback should not throw the ball 40 times. He's not that guy. If he's throwing it 25 times, I think they're in great shape. Last night was a referendum on how they should not play football.
And as far as it's interesting for those who've watched the Jets play this year, their defensive line, which should, on paper, be the strength of their team. It should be their strongest unit, has actually, for the most part this year, been very disappointing. Yeah. All the talk was about how they didn't have a sack on the entire season going into last Sunday's game, which they ultimately lost to Atlanta in a rainstorm. They lost 3 tough games in a row. The Jets were 3-2 for those of you who are not following, and why would you? This was not a team that people were paying much attention to before the season began. But they were 3-2, and then they lost a game to New England that they could have won. They were up 14-0 early, and it was close all the way through. They lost a game to the Dolphins that they absolutely should have won.
Yes.
They were up 14 points in the fourth quarter. They lost a game last week to Atlanta that they could have won, and then last night they go out and they just blitz Buffalo in a very impressive, as you say, defensive performance, and they were physical on the offensive side, and they ran the ball. So who knows what to make of it. For the Jets, it's a nice win, and Todd Bowles afterwards was talking about what it means for his team.
It's big because we lost 3, 7 points, 5 points, 3 points. To come back on a Thursday on a short week before you get a weekend off is big. Division opponent. Again, we were 3-5. We needed to get to 4-5. Hopefully we can get to 5-5 next week, but it was big.
So that's that for Todd Bowles. For those of you who don't know him well, that's about as much as you're going to get out of him. That's about as insightful as he's going to be in a moment like that, which is fine. I've said it many times. for the guys who coach the teams that I root for, whether it was the bombastic Rex Ryan or Eric Mangini, who was practically a mute up there, or Bowles, who I really don't care. You don't have to say anything as far as I'm concerned. Just win games. Right. And this year the Jets have won more games and have played better than I think any of their fans had any expectation.
No doubt. And as far as Todd Bowles is concerned, some people will make a lot about his demeanor, Greeny. Tony Dungy had a very similar demeanor, very stoic at the podium, didn't really get too high, get too low. So I don't really pay much attention to that. I watch how his team plays and performs for him. Watch how they go into the field. Watch their emotional level. Watch how they fight. And this team has fought hard all season, so they're responding to their coach. I like Todd Bowles. I just wish he had a consistent franchise quarterback that he could build around, because we all know that Josh McCown is just a stopgap to the next guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, what they have here is not sustainable.
Right.
What they have here is a 38-year-old quarterback who has lifted this team. He has done for them exactly what Ryan Fitzpatrick was hoped to do last year. When the Jets brought back Fitzpatrick to try and catch lightning in a bottle when they had all those veterans and they were coming off a year in which they had won 10 games, they were hoping that he would play like this. If this Josh McCown had been the quarterback of the Jets last year, they would have had a vastly different season and things would be entirely different. But you're right. Josh McCown isn't the quarterback of the Jets' future, which will lead people to wonder whether winning these games is actually helping them or hurting them in the long run. I'm going to take the side of helping them. There's no way in the world they're getting one of the top 2 or 3 picks now anyway, because they're way better than Cleveland. They're way better than San Francisco. They're way better than the Colts. So they have no chance of finishing like with a top 3 pick. So at this point, win games. Let your young players win games. Let there be that kind of a good feeling. I think if the Jets actually managed to be a 500 team this year, it would be a colossal accomplishment. Right. They have a ton of money to spend in free agency, and then we'll see how they go about trying to address the quarterback position, which you are right. McCown is not going to be their quarterback whenever it is that they put together a team that they hope can win a championship.
They're going to get a quarterback, Greeny, in this draft, I think, and I think they're going to get a good one, because I think a lot of people are going to be torn on the guys coming out of college. We discussed this yesterday. Baker Mayfield, Donald, Rosen, Allen. There are a lot of guys that are coming out.
I'm going to have to start looking more closely at some of these guys. Baker Mayfield to me, listen, I love the moxie.
Right.
I love a million things about him. But in my, I've always felt that the college game has changed so much now that pro teams are actually emulating what college teams do. But for the longest time, there have been basically 2 different kinds of college quarterbacks. Ones who were great college players and ones who translated to the NFL.
Right.
Mayfield I've always viewed as a guy who was a great college quarterback who did not necessarily translate to the NFL. Now, the more people you talk to, the more you hear them say, look, he can throw it from the pocket. They just don't ask him to do it very much. Are you telling me he can do that? He's a first-round pick?
I think Baker Mayfield is going to be viewed as a first-round pick by some. And I think, Greeny, when you start to look at guys on the professional level that are similar, look at Alex Smith, mobile guy, can throw on the move, can throw from different platforms. I'm not comparing him to Aaron Rodgers, but look what Aaron Rodgers does. He's not always sitting back there. Yes, he can throw it on time. He can throw it in rhythm. But a lot of quarterbacks nowadays are moving. Look who the Kansas City Chiefs drafted, Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. He's a guy that's a gunslinger, a guy that's going to throw it from different angles, run all around the pocket. So the National Football League is moving away from just having the 6'5", 250 guy that can stand in one spot and sling it. What I'm saying is this, is that the Jets have wasted a lot of picks, Hackenberg and Bryce Petty, all these quarterbacks. They're going to have an opportunity to waste another one. If they choose to, they'll have an opportunity to either find a good quarterback or they'll waste another one. Either way, I think they're going to have to draft a quarterback, and they will get one if they're picking in the top 10 or 15, because I think there are enough quarterbacks to go around.
On the Buffalo side of things last night, that was a bad loss, and the numbers are somewhat, well, they're purely coincidental, but they don't spell anything good for the Buffalo Bills. Twice since the last time they made the playoffs. The Bills haven't made the playoffs in this millennium. The last time they made the playoffs was 1999. Twice since then, they've started 5-2.
Right.
Each of those previous 2 times, their 8th game was against the Jets. They lost, and they wound up under 500 on the season. So here they are, another edition of the Buffalo Bills, 5-2, 8th game against the Jets, and they lose. We'll see what happens from here on out. For the purposes of last night, Sean McDermott, frustrated.
This is uncharacteristic of this team to date. The way we've played so far, we've got to learn from it. We got outcoached, we got outplayed. Fundamentally, we weren't very good. And then you look at the penalties. Some of those were, you call them aggressive, a few of them. But other than that, it was you can't do that and expect to win a game in the NFL. So we've got to get better. We'll learn from this, and no excuses. We give credit to the opponent, to the Jets. They beat us straight up tonight.
I mean, Greeny, their formula was not there. Okay, Tyrod Taylor is a guy, we said it again, and the stat is the last 6 times Tyrod Taylor has attempted 35 or more passes, the Bills have lost. Like, he just can't do that. Like, they cannot throw the football consistently like a Green Bay, like a New England Patriots team. They have to run the football. And I think Sean McDermott knows that. I'm not going to make a referendum based off the statistics and say, here we go again, the Buffalo Bills are going down the wrong rabbit hole. What I'll say is this, is they have to go back, find what their formula is, figure out how to run the football, keep Shady McCoy healthy, and now allow Tyrod Taylor to throw the football 15, 20 times a game. Get your defense playing a lot better, and I think they'll win some of these games.
All right, we'll see. There's an interesting weekend kickoff for the Jets and the Bills in the AFC East. We're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Great guest list today. We got Field Yates coming in talking football. We'll go to Houston, get some perspective from John Granato, who covers the Texans and does a talk show down there, and we'll get his thoughts on losing Deshaun Watson and, of course, on the parade going on today with the Astros. Stu Gotts today, Joey Galloway today, and A.J. Hinch, manager of the world champion Astros, plus Tim Tebow. Could we be more jam-packed? All the guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And coming up next, we learned something about the first pick in the draft this week, and I'm afraid people are going to think the exact opposite of what they should.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I've never felt more alive.
Disclaimer. Geico cannot guarantee you will feel more alive. You either possess functioning respiratory and circulatory systems, or you do not, or you are a zombie. If you are indeed a brain-starved zombie and you would like to save money on car insurance, the Geico legal team applauds your excellent life choices, even in your shambling afterlife. But we strongly encourage you to visit geico.com or download the Geico app. Please stay a minimum of 500 feet away from our large and presumably delicious, delicious brains.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Mike and Mike Booger is here. Jam-packed morning. I got 2 stats for you on the Jets, and then I have one on the Bills. On the Jets' future, there are reasons to be optimistic, and here are some others. They are a very young team. There are only 3 players on the roster over the age of 30, and they have $45 million in projected cap space for next year, which is the second most of any team in the NFL. So they have money, Booger, not only to draft a quarterback if they want one, but they could also go out and spend their money on a free agent quarterback if they chose to go that route.
Greeny, here's what I'll say. You're not going to find your franchise quarterback in free agency because most of the time, if the quarterbacks are any good, they're re-signing with their original team.
Well, again, the unique circumstance here is Kirk Cousins.
That's a unique one, but are they willing to overpay for Kirk Cousins? I mean, are they willing to give Kirk Cousins $25, $28 million a year? Or are they willing to draft a Mayfield, a Rosen, an Allen, or a Darnold? To me, that'll be the key. But they do need a franchise quarterback. As far as the stat you just read about being young and having a lot of money, that's what they should be right now, Green. Like, when you're a bad team, you want to be young. You want to have plenty of wealth to spend. Now it's up to the brass in the front office to spend it on the right guys and build the team the right way.
That's Mike McCagnon. And there are 8 teams right now in the NFL that are currently 3-5 or worse. Of those, the Browns are the only one without a stable or permanent quarterback in place. So what that would suggest is that many of the teams who will be picking at the top of this draft, or at least who will have that selection, aren't going to be in the quarterback market. Now, that's a bit deceptive because one of those teams, obviously, Hembo, as you sent me the stat, one of them you're talking about is the Giants. I'll be very interested to see what the Giants do. They clearly have a stable quarterback in place. But what do they think of that? Which direction are they planning on going with that? I haven't seen all of the teams at this point. In Cleveland, we assume they'll be in the quarterback draft market again. So we'll see. So it's going to be a very interesting, I think, the draft, that period where teams start making their trades. We've seen a lot of big trades at the top of the draft in recent years with quarterbacks available. I think we'll see it again.
I wouldn't be surprised if New Orleans took a quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if Indianapolis took a quarterback with everything going on with Andrew Luck. There are teams that we think that have a quarterback, the New York Giants, that I think are going to take a quarterback, realizing that this may be a draft rich in QBs, and the next couple years may not be.
So we'll see where that thing winds up and a whole lot more. Then there's a lot of Twitter reaction through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed to a variety of things, including our talk about the temperature.
Yes.
Rick tweets, anything less than 70, I'm wearing a hoodie and jeans. It's 85 today, he writes, in South Georgia. See, Rick and Booger and all of you, I can't fathom what life would be like that. Like, to me, in November, it starts to get cold. Yeah. In December, it's cold. January, February, March, it's cold. I worked with a guy years and years and years ago in Chicago named Jim Memolo. and he would do the sportscasts and during the radio show, and I would do those sometimes too. So I'd listen. I was a young kid doing it, and he was older than me and good at it, and I would listen to him. And they wanted us to do a weather forecast at the end of the sportscast, and I'll never forget one year. This is Chicago now,
right?
And this was like in December, and he said the forecast it's going to be cold until April. Deal with it. And he was exactly right. That's the weather. There's no need for a weather forecast in Chicago. Starting in December and until like the end of March, it's going to be cold as hell. That's it. That's how cold. That's what the weather is going to be. It's either going to be really cold or it's going to be unbearably cold.
Right.
That's what it's going to be. So if it's 85 today in South Georgia, that just seems too delightful.
Oh, it's great,
That's what I mean.
It's tremendous.
Life isn't supposed to be that good. TJ tweets, I work outside, up in the air. A 36-degree winter would be downright tropical. Yeah, see, that's the thing. If you were for people who work outside,
right,
and then they're in the winter and they're out there work, I mean, it's tough. I don't know. If I were a person who worked outside, I would live where you live.
Well, no doubt about it. And I don't mind the air cooling off a little bit, which is why this morning.
Again, your definition of cooling off and mine are very different.
Prime example. Like it cooled off a little bit this morning. It was 60 degrees when I woke up this morning here in Bristol.
Oh, what is this? Like an Arctic chill?
Yeah, well, it was like, to me, it was kind of cool.
It's the warmest day we have left in 2017, okay?
To me, it was kind of cool. So, Greeny, which leads me to my story. I woke up about 4 a.m. this morning.
Uh-oh.
And I'm like,
because I saw you tweeted.
Yes, it's been a long morning already.
It's been a long morning.
Yes, I got up at 4 a.m. And the first thing I said, you know what? I'm up early. It's a little early to go over to the studio. Greeny's still in the bed probably, so there's really no need for me to head in. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go for a run. So I do what most people do when you get up in the morning. I go in the bathroom, handle my business, take care of all that. Now I'm going for my run. Problem is, Greeny,
Did you need to share that part of it?
Yes, because most of America.
And the telling of that story.
Most of America does this. Yes.
No, I'm not suggesting. Everyone knows everyone does this. My point is, in the telling of that story, unless that winds up coming back and playing some role in the story,
it's going to come back. Pay attention.
I'm listening.
So
now that's foreshadowing.
Yes, exactly. So I take off on my run. I'm going to run about 1.5 miles, 2 miles.
Sure.
And I get lost. And it's kind of hard.
You're running outside?
Yes, I'm outside.
Oh, I thought you meant on a kind of treadmill. They have a gym in this hotel, right?
No, yes, this is the DoubleTree across the street.
Okay, but you're running outside.
I want to go outside because it's cool. It's 60 degrees.
Right.
I can run a little longer. I feel good. I get lost. And not only do I get lost, about halfway through the run, I realized that what I thought I finished in the morning, I didn't finish.
Oh. So it does come back.
Yeah, it comes back, Gritty.
Comes full circle.
Yes, and so now I'm passing by a convenience store, and the store is closed. Or maybe the guy just didn't want to open the door because I had like a skull cap on because it's cool, but it's not quite warm enough for me. And so I knock on the door, the lights are on, but nobody comes to the door. So now I'm lost. I make a left turn, and all I see is a light like a mile away. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be Middle Street, which leads me back to the hotel. And I'm like, can I make it? And so I take off running. About halfway, I said, no, I got to stop.
Oh, no.
I
don't
stop.
like where the story is going.
Okay, I stop. I pause for a moment. And I said, you know what? Fight the urge. You have to fight this urge.
With everything you have.
And I fought it, Greeny.
I
fought it with everything I had.
Being.
And I had to stop for a minute and just mentally focus. And I did. And then I took back off again. I got to the light, and I could see the hotel. And I said, you know what? I've made it. And then out of nowhere comes like this 18-wheeler down the street, blows a puddle of water on the sidewalk, hits me. And I'm like, you know what? And I lost focus for a minute. I said, you know what? You got to go back. Lock in. Fight it. Because once again, I'm not finished. I got to get back to the room. So luckily, Greeny, I made it back to the room, and I was able to finish what I started. But I got lost, and I probably ran 3 miles when I only meant to run 1.5 miles. So it's been a long morning.
That is remarkable.
It's been a long morning. The mental focus that was happening between 4 and 5 a.m. by me was tremendous.
I'm very impressed. I mean, that actually is a good story because those are terrible moments.
Oh, they are. Have you ever been there?
Have I been there? We've all been there. I mean, as I said, this is a universal function. Okay?
Right. I'm saying, but have you been there on a run or on the golf course where you're like, you know what? Man.
There are any number of places where this is not where the act that you're describing is not convenient.
Yes.
And yes, I have been in those circumstances
what did you do?
As we have all. Well, like you did. I mean, I was just sort of locked in. I mean, you got to do whatever it is you got to do. Nothing with me. I have some stories about when my kids were little that I can tell, but let's not get ourselves completely sidetracked with this. I'm glad everything is all right.
Everything is fine. Everything worked out good.
It reminds me of the story where Jay Billis was doing our show with us one time, and he was staying in that hotel, and there was some sort of mix-up, and the car never went to get him, and he wound up walking here, and he wound up which was remarkable, and he wound up walking past like a dead roadkill on the side of the road and all this kind of stuff, and that's one of those where his dedication was greater than mine. I just would have stayed until the car came. Okay, anyway. anyway, we got a lot to get to today. Let's get to the Thursday night piece of this. So I was reading a very interesting story this morning from Sean McManus, who was the chairman of CBS Sports and is a very well-known person in the sports industry. And everyone is presenting different theories on what's going on with the National Football League right now and why the ratings are down, or as they were described by an executive from Fox, I think, in the same story, soft. The ratings are soft. Right. And he was suggesting that one of the reasons is the Thursday night games. That while the Thursday night game itself is doing reasonably well, the games have been good, right, and they're certainly making a lot of money out of it, and the ratings have been what they've been. That what it's done is that they try to put a marquee game in that spot pretty much every week. And what that does is it takes away from the Sunday package. So what we're all accustomed to, what football has been basically since the beginning of football, and certainly since football started to become what it is now in the 70s, this dramatic rise from what was, a second or third sport in the country to what it is now, which is, a behemoth and a financial, runaway train.
Yeah.
Last Sunday, there were 2 games in the 4 o'clock spot. 2. If you're watching on the Red Zone, you didn't even they were constantly going back to the studio and giving you highlights because there were only 2 games. It was the Seattle-Houston game and the Dallas-Washington game, and that was it. Because they got all these teams on buys, and they got a Sunday night game, and we got a Monday night game, and we got a Thursday night game. And so I think that does make sense. I think there is something to be said for that not only has the scarcity of it been removed from the discussion, not only have people's television viewing habits changed, which have impacted ratings in every way. I was looking at a story yesterday that we're talking about the TV ratings for this year's World Series, the second highest rated game since 2002 when it did a 19 share. Game 7 of the 1986 World Series, Mets and Red Sox did a 38 share. So television ratings have just changed in every single way. But I do think that's a factor as well. It's another area where I think some short-sighted gain may wind up costing them in the long run.
Well, and Greeny, some of that is how we look at it, because I think we expect every game to outrate the game before. We expect every game to have a high rating, and that's just not going to happen. It's inconceivable for every game to rate high. Is there something to the fact that maybe too much access, maybe too many games, maybe too many nights? Well, the NFL used to own Sunday. The NFL would own Monday. Now we're trying to own Thursday. Come playoff time, we're trying to own Saturday also. I understand that. But I just think that we fall into this pattern where we want every game to outrate the game before it, and that's just not going to happen. Are the ratings down? Sure, the ratings are down. We understand that there's a lot going on. There has been a lot going on with the NFL, but I wouldn't go to the point that I would say that the NFL is in dire straits by any stretch of the imagination.
No, dire straits would be dramatically overstating
right.
it. When Al Michaels was on with us and he said if you look at the end of the year at the highest rated shows, it's all football games.
Correct.
And that's going to continue. There's just fewer people watching them in the traditional way that we have always measured it in the past, and that's not going to change. But coming up in a moment, you will hear one player who has a real problem with the game being played on a Thursday night, and we'll find out if Booger agrees or disagrees. Plus, 2 people who would know give us insight into the future plans of 2 NBA superstars. Those and more stories as we continue next. Stay with us on a Friday. Mike and Mike. Booger is here. We're talking about Thursday night football and what impact it may be having on the overall Sunday ratings of the National Football League and the overall perception of the National Football League. There's that side of it, and then there's the players' side of it. Richie Incognito, a name we haven't heard much lately. On the Bills, they've been very good. They played very badly and lost last night to the Jets, and afterwards he was not happy about that game being played on a Thursday.
Yeah, it's tough, man. These Thursday night games, they suck. They throw a wrench in our schedule. It's absolutely ridiculous that we have to do this. As physical as this game is, and as much work and preparation that goes into this to force us to play games on 4-day weeks, it's completely unfair. And whatever, the league makes money off of it, and that's all they care about anyway. So we just keep trucking. I mean, we got a tough group of guys in this locker room, and back to the drawing board, back to Buffalo, and got the Saints.
Booger, I'll just give you the floor on that. You're a former player, so your perspective on this is more significant than mine. I do get the issue with playing these games on short weeks. The one thing I'll say is I never hear a player on the team that won say that.
Correct.
And that was the first thought that jumped to my mind with that. Do you believe Thursday night games are completely unfair?
Yes, I do, but everybody has to do it. It's one thing, Greeny, to be unfair. It's another thing for everyone to be in that situation, and everyone has to do it at some point during the season. And so here's what I would say. It's not going to change. The NFL is making entirely too much money with Thursday Night Football, and so we know it's going to stick around for the foreseeable future. So if you're a player, Tony Dungy used to always tell us, don't complain about things that you can't change. And players can't change this. Players have to embrace it. They have to figure out a way to take care of their body, and it's up to the coaches also. Because here's what we did on Thursday Night Football. We would play Sunday. You would basically not get a day off. You would come in Monday, no practice, a mental day, watch tape. Tuesday would be kind of an install day where you would install everything, still not very physical, no pads, but you're kind of running around, getting loose, getting a sweat in. And if you traveled on Wednesday. If not, you were at home the day before the game on a Wednesday, and then you played Thursday. So is it unfair? Yes, it's unfair, Greeny, because football is a physical sport. Imagine having to give speeches for a living, and you had to give this 2-hour dissertation, and you only did it once a week, and your vocal cords were prepared to do it every 7 days. Now imagine you had to do it every 3 days 1 week. It would do a little something to your voice, and talking is not that physical. Now imagine you have to do a physical sport like football. That was probably a terrible analogy, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, I appreciate you. You always do that. You're always trying to put something into my wheelhouse.
I do.
There's nothing I can relate to about this.
Because I want you to feel what I feel.
No, I get it. I mean, I totally get it. I understand that this is not the way this thing was designed to be done.
Right.
So the fact that everyone has to do it means that it's a level playing field. It doesn't mean that it's okay.
Right.
It might mean that it is equally not okay for everyone.
Yes.
Now, what I've not seen is any data that suggests that there are more injuries in the Thursday games than there are any other time. So if that is the case, then I'm wide open to having the conversation. One of the things that we were just talking to sort of conflate the two topics is that the Thursday night games are damaging the ratings of the Sunday games. Well, the network executives apparently want, a lot of them would like them to go back to just having like the 8 games.
Right.
Well, which they used to have, and they were NFL Network only. Well, if you do that, now every team isn't playing on a Thursday.
Correct. Now it's unfair.
So it isn't the same for everyone. Everyone doesn't face the same advantage or disadvantage, depending on the way you look at it. So, I don't know what the answer is. I recognize that football is a game that these guys need, you guys need that time in between to heal up and rest up and all of that. And then when you have the concussion issue thrown into it as well, it further complicates things. But they make $1 billion a year on it. I mean, the league makes $1 billion playing these games on Thursday nights. And the players get whatever percentage that they get, 41, I don't even know what the 41, 42, 48, whatever percentage of it is. They get the players sharing that money. So if you want to say that the Thursday night game is actually doing more harm than good and it's worth not doing anymore, and you want to I'm willing to have that conversation. I'm willing to listen. Here's the one thing I'll say. People enjoy, I think, for the most part, people enjoy having a game on Thursday night.
I do.
But I think if they took the Thursday night game away, I don't think people would say, oh, my God, what happened to my Thursday night game? Like, I think we are so in the habit and so ingrained. If you took away the Sunday games, you'd be lost. I think if you took away the Monday games, and this might sound like a self-serving thing because we have Monday Night Football, but there's been a Monday night game my entire lifetime. Right. I think you'd be like, no, wait a minute. There's supposed to be a game tonight. This is the rhythm of my week. The Thursday night game still feels very new, and I don't think it's something that if it went away, we would miss it terribly. I'm not suggesting they should take it away. Right. It makes an enormous amount of money. I think people watch it, but I think people would live with it if it wasn't there.
You know, you had an idea at one point, which at the time I thought was ludicrous, but now I think it might be the idea that the NFL should look into, which is figure out a way to give a team a bye week before the Thursday night game.
It's not ludicrous. It's common sense.
Well, because you'd be lengthening the season a little longer.
1 week. You just add one bye every. There was a year or two, I forget how many years now, that every team had 2 bye weeks.
Right.
So give every team a bye week going into their Thursday night game. It might be a little bit difficult to do scheduling-wise, but they can figure it out. They've got algorithms that do this stuff now. So give every team the bye week, and you don't have this problem.
Right.
But that doesn't address the issue. In fact, it worsens the issue of the dilution of the Sunday schedule. All right, we'll continue to work on this. Field Yates and more as we continue on a busy Football Friday. Mike and Mike.